Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast, bringing you another episode with a great guest. His name is Ryan Margolin. And Ryan owns a company called Pro Hair Labs at prohairlabs.com. And we talk about three things today. I'm looking down because I'm going to read them. The first thing we talked about was leadership. The second thing we talked about is mind. And the third thing we talked about is strategic value. And the reason I had to read those three is because originally we were going to just do this on strategic value, but the podcast went in a direction, the interview went in a direction that I was just not really expecting, but it was like tremendous, mind-blowing value. So I would cue into the whole podcast, get a pen, paper, mental notes, whatever you got to get. I would listen to this one multiple times. There's such great information that comes out around this, especially when we talk about, leadership and where you really should be scaling your business and at what level, and how leadership actually plays into that scale portion. So many people are trying to install things in their business early, and quite frankly, I don't need them at that point. But when you get to a certain level in the business and you're going to start to scale, leadership becomes far more important at that point. And we talk a lot about, the mind and how it actually creates strategic value and how it limits our business growth and how it can actually propel us into new heights, as well as strategic value and why you must not need, but you must have in your business if you're ever looking to exit the business or you just want branding and positioning in that way. So again, pull up a chair, get a pen, get a paper, doing it old school or a tablet or whatever, and let's go to the interview with Ryan right now. Ryan, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
No, thanks, Neil, for having me, Doug. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
You have a unique background because, I think you were born in New Jersey originally, or you're from New Jersey. Then you lived in Florida in the United States, and then you met someone in Ireland, and you now reside in Ireland, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
And you've been running your business since 2011, but your father started the business prior to.
Correct. Yeah. The business, at its core has been around since 1994. And he was operating it from then until 2009 when I had joined the company. And subsequently after that, my brother Daryl in 2011 and my brother David in around 2013. So over time, obviously my dad naturally transitioned to a different position in the company, and really we're at the helm, taking it in the direction that we see that is the future for the company. So that's really in a bird's eye view where it started to, where it is now.
So folks, the company we're talking about is Pro Hair Labs. Check them out at prohairlabs.com. Now, I love this story because your father is kind of semi-famous. He was in a band called the Dimensions back in the 60s, which was kind of like a doo-wop band, right? I mean, they were, and they have some famous songs. And was your dad? The band wasn't around but they did make it into the Hall of Fame, right? Or something.
They did, yeah. The Music Hall of Fame. So, and that was, oh man, that must have been maybe 10 years ago now. There was a big induction ceremony in California, so he got to take a trip out there and get some acknowledgement for their achievements to the end, and their contribution, I suppose, to the industry.
So that's really cool because your business started from your father because your mom had some challenge or something with a cosmetic or hair product, right?
Yeah, she had chemical poisoning from the adhesives that she was using on her clients. Even no matter how well ventilated the area is, the ingredients were kind of derivatives of gasoline. So it was toluene, hexane, xylene, and they were very common in the industry. But she got chemical poisoning after many years of using them. So it forced her to retire early. And look, she's okay now, but she never was able to go back to work full time. So that was the motivation and the mission behind the company at its inception, and it still stays with us till this day. But our mission has slightly shifted now to a more broad scope of making sure that we're putting high performing, safe products into the marketplace.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because this is where I wanted to take our conversation. Like, your dad started the business, and traditionally, like first generation owners, they build a business, they do their best, they get there. My dad, the same thing. My dad, worked for Raytheon Corporation, and one day, I guess he told me, he walked in and some guy started spitting blood all over the floor, and he said, "I'm never going to have an ulcer like these people." And he was a high level manager within Raytheon, and he said, the heck with it, and he started an electric motor machinery repair company.
Yeah.
And because that's what he did in the Navy. Now,
Yeah.
he struggled along for a good many years until my brothers came along, and we were all like, hey, established business, no problem, right?
Yeah.
But usually first generation. So a lot of people listening to this, if you're struggling through the first 5 years of your business, it's kind of normal in a lot of ways. And then your brother took, and you came into the business, and you've had this family business, and you guys have taken this now from I'll call it a fledgling business to a pretty super enterprise.
Yeah, we put in a lot of work, and we've learned a lot. And as you said, it's kind of a second generation business now, where our plans are for our children to be involved if they wish to do so. But I think at its core that there's a lot of learning within that whole process, especially around the transition of a company and the letting go and the receiving of. So it's been a really interesting journey over the last, say, at least 10 years to where we are now, and what we've achieved with the company is not something that we take for granted. We're always transitioning and pivoting every day to face only to face new challenges. So it's part of the growing curve. Look, at the end of the day, if your business didn't feel broken in some capacity, it would be time to worry, because that just means you're not growing.
That is gold. So I'm going to repeat that. If your business is not broken in some capacity, it's time to worry. Right. So that is gold. So, because so many people building companies, they're thinking, my gosh, everything's got to be smooth. It's going to be, when I get it smooth, it's perfect. Yeah. And what I'm hearing from you is if you got it that smooth, it's probably running too perfect, and you need to kind of.
Yeah. What I found, me personally, I can only speak for myself on this instance, is that when we were, kind of operating mid-level six figures, everything was smooth. We were hungry. We chased everything. But there was never really any major problems within the business. Once we hit that seven-figure mark, everything broke, and we had trouble figuring out what to do because we were navigating uncharted waters. So that forced us to look inwards towards ourselves, personally develop to be the people we needed to run our company and help it grow and transition into what became more about us doing the jobs to a team doing the jobs. So naturally, once that seven-figure mark was broken, we started that journey ourselves, and pushing up into eight figures, it became more about leadership than it did the systems and the processes, because you had them in place, you know how to build them. Now you need to make sure that the people have very clear outcomes inside of the company to hit the targets and the goals that you have set in front of everyone. And you want to try to do that as autonomously as possible, allowing people to explore their roles, to push themselves to, see what they're truly capable of, and allow them the freedom to contribute to the company in ways that maybe you wouldn't be thinking, because I think that's where the best results come. When you allow individuals to explore their own contributions, it might not be in line with what you thought it would be, but your no real plans are. You can make as many plans as you want, but the end result usually ends up a lot different than what you're planning.
Yeah. I started a trip to California and I ended up in Louisiana or whatever it might be, right?
Exactly. So I think that's just all part of the journey.
I think it's a natural part, and a lot of people fight it. And I think they fight it because they have a vision. And folks, we're talking with Mr. Ryan Margolin, and he owns a company called ProHairLabs.com. And we're talking a little bit now about vision, and we're going to work into strategic value. I think business owners, Ryan, from your perspective, they have a vision when they start out. Now, for some, I don't know what your dad's vision is. I'd like to ask you, did he ever tell you what the vision was of the company?
I genuinely don't ever think he saw any further than the mission of why, or the purpose he started the company. He never, like he's openly said to me, he never thought in a million years that the company could, achieve the levels of what we've seen so far. So that tells me, he was solely focused on the ability to impact a collective of individuals, which, let's face it, in the overall scope of the world, hair replacement studios are quite small. So his vision just wasn't large enough. But when we realized the product was validated and, we hit a high amount of those hair studios through different campaigns, I think it started to change the way he viewed things. So his vision was really the starting point for us, because his vision became our vision. But then we were really hungry and we wanted to make something of this company. So it transitioned into a different type of mission for the company.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. But see, a lot of people, they keep going back to the original vision and they don't realize it changes over time. And then and they've got to evolve their vision over time. And I kind of liken it to confidence, right? It's kind of like, I'm fearful of heights.
Yeah.
Right. Why? One of my brothers hung me off a roof when I was 3 years old, 35 feet in the air, and dangled me and told me they were going to let me go. That's where it started for me. Right. So
that would do it. That would do it.
Fun Italian Jewish family, what I mean?
If we went into those stories, I'm pretty sure we could all, dig out some sort of fear or anxiety that we get around, childhood memories.
And I totally agree. We all have them. Yeah. But I had to challenge that confidence level over time, right? I mean, it was to a point where I was like, geez, I can't even climb a mountain, it's like, but now today I've even thought of going skydiving. So it's kind of one of those things that it took time. A vision also takes time. And a lot of people, they cling on to that initial vision, and it limits the growth of their company, I have found. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah, I think it could. That statement is very true, and that could have actually even been us. It wasn't until the point where we realized, especially when we hit the 7-figure mark, and the systems and the communication channels completely just collapsed on each other, and we started missing leads. Everything started falling through the cracks. So we actually realized then that the mission on how the company started, and the vision for the company could be much bigger. And that's where it kind of transitioned. So I do agree with you. Like, naturally over time, the mission of the company or the vision, it has to transform, because typically you started from a passion or something you've experienced, or you see a gap in something. But as you go along, I don't think you can ever really truly forecast just how big of an impact a product or a service can have until you start to get the feedback, until you start to see what's happening right in front of you. And naturally, that, as you said, going back to your childhood, that brings up a whole different set of fear and anxiety, and I think that's part of the personal development side of it as well. You have to get comfortable with that. Everyone faces it and everyone experiences it, but if you're passionate enough about the core of why you're doing something, I think that will always override any inability to try to move past something. I think it'll set yourself and position yourself very well to continue to move forward and change as a person.
And how important is it? I think we both know, but how important is it to actually realize that as the owner or the runner of the business, that to grow, one has to grow along with that.
And that's the whole thing. So, I mean, look, I can go so deep into this, but at the end of the day, as a leader of a company, whether you're a manager or you're an executive or you're a director or whatever it may be, you have to realize that in many cases, no one is coming to save you. You know, this is all you. And, you know, a decade ago, it's got to be more now. You know, my father-in-law shared a piece of information with me, and he said, look, Ryan, you can be dishonest with yourself and you can cheat everyone around you, but he said you can't cheat that reflection staring back at you in the mirror. And essentially at the time, what that meant for me was that, look, if I can learn to have those honest conversations with myself, there's not many things that I couldn't overcome, because I think that's something that's missing in leadership nowadays. I think cultivating that relationship with yourself, or sometimes it's even as maybe arrogant as positioning yourself as the hero in your own story. I think it's really lacking in today's day and age, especially if you're undertaking a new venture or you have a semi-successful business. Everyone, I think, and for the most part, looks for that outward approval before they even start their journey of self-development or starting a new business, and that's the quickest way to failure in my eyes. Most people, in fact, won't really truly believe in you until you've achieved a certain level of success, and that just basically means you're going to have to work as a leader, you're going to have to work for a long time, with no applause, no recognition. And, when times get tough, which they ultimately will, there'll be many of them, you have to have that belief in yourself. So I think that's probably key and incremental to, leadership.
It is the best said I've ever heard in my life. So thank you. I know we were going to start this whole conversation on strategic value and building that in, and we'll get there, folks, I promise.
It's part of it, though. I think that's where it all starts. The strategic value is only as good as your ability to change as an individual, because that's how your company is going to grow. So I think that's really the foundation of everything.
Wow, that is profound. Let's go there. So why?
Yeah, well, look, if you think about it, at its core, when you're starting a business, you're hands-on with everything. You're in the trenches, you're doing all the work, and you become so conditioned to operate that way that when you hit a ceiling or you're stretched on your resources, the one thing you're afraid to do is let go, because you're afraid that nobody else can do it as good as you. So that's your very first bottleneck. Right? You become your own bottleneck after some time. Now, not everyone faces that problem, but I'd say 95% of people that I've seen do, because they're just afraid to let go, or they're inexperienced at putting systems together or processes. Now, I was that exact person, and I got help for that. I worked with a consultant, for about 5 years that helped me put all of that together and allowed me then to start offloading. And it all started with doing time studies. So basically every 15 minutes, I'd write down what I was doing for a 2-week period. And I broke it up into 3 sections, which was tactical, strategic, and self-care. And at the end of those 2 weeks, I'd make a percentage of where I was spending my time tactically, strategically, and with self-care. And for everything that I was doing tactically, I'd create a project spec or a job brief, and I'd hire someone to do it, and I'd offload all that stuff so I can continue to spend my time in the strategic space. Because as a leader, that's where you need to be spending most of your time, or as the person with the vision of the future of the company. That is 100% the starting point of it all. And if you can get your head around that sooner rather than later in your journey, when you do hit that point, it's going to be so much easier to let go, because you're prepared for it. Most people aren't prepared for it when it happens.
So I can imagine I have people here listening and they're saying, well, that sounds great. I can get rid of the tactical stuff, but I don't really know if I have the money to actually be able to do that, because now if I just focus on the strategic stuff, where am I? I'm so used to doing the tactical stuff every single day. Well, how would you respond to that?
So my response to that would be, when you get to that point, and let's say you make, and it is a tough decision, because ultimately you've got to take 2 steps back to come forward. But it's the strategic stuff that's going to make the biggest impact here, because as long as you have someone executing, the plan is going to be followed. So if somebody said that to me, I would really just be in a position to say, listen, you have to be confident enough to make that decision. And when you do, and you let go of that tactical stuff, you're going to feel worthless. It's going to feel lonely, because you were doing all this stuff, executing on a daily basis, and then you go to essentially zero. You're back to square one. But what you need to start to realize is that you go back to square one, but everything that you were doing every day, executing all the plans, is still being done. So you're able to take a step back from the company and look at it and look at your projects and go like, oh my God, these things are getting nailed one step at a time, and everything is moving right. So that leads you to your next part of whatever your plan may be, to get further business, dive deeper into, let's say the marketing strategy that you want, or the sales strategy. And ultimately, when you move to new phases, you're going to have to take a certain amount of that on. It's like a revolving door. Like, that's why every few months I do my own time study, because I will always at some point fall back into the tactical space. And when I do, naturally there's a level of overwhelm after a little while. But I'm conditioned enough now to know that when I experience even a remote amount of overwhelm, it's time to take a look at what I'm doing on a daily basis. So it's a recurring process. I don't care if you're a CEO, if you're a COO, vice president, whatever it may be. You're going to be in the same boat. If the company's growing, you need to keep the rotation going.
Yeah, and I found that no matter what size the company is, it's consistent. It's just consistent. Like, I had a gentleman who had a $200 million company, and he was so unhappy. But
Yeah.
when you take a look at the time, though, what he's doing, he's so micromanaging that whole company.
It's impossible though, and I can imagine at $200 million, if you're micromanaging a company, that's the quickest way to give yourself a heart attack, because it's not healthy, and it's not fun. Even where we are as a company, I've fallen into that trap a couple of times, and you're talking where we are versus 200 million, there's a big difference. I can only imagine the stress and the overwhelm that could actually bring. Look, I like stress or overwhelm or fear and anxiety, or that they can be a really big health problem, but there's also the opportunity to look at healthy levels of fear and anxiety, and how we can use that to motivate us as well. Because look, I think we always have to, like, for me, we always have to go through the growth of a business, not really fearing if anything, if everything could come tumbling down. If you're focused on that, you're always worried about the what ifs. You have to just keep going and just not focus on, what if this goes wrong, or what if this goes wrong. Deal with what's right in front of you, because at the end of the day, that's going to be most of the firefighting that you do as a leader. It's going to be dealing with the daily things that are right in front of you and how you can solve them.
Yeah, and Oprah Winfrey, I heard her ask a great question when she gets at that point. She asked the question, "What is this meant to teach me?"
Yeah, I think it teaches you whatever it needs to teach you. I think it's different for everyone. While I do believe there are some common lessons that individuals who are in a growing business or changing themselves need to learn. There's like every single experience that we have are unequivocally unique to each of us. There's no journey that one person has had that has been identical for another. And I think that's the beautiful part of kind of what makes up our own blueprint, is that our experiences are made up of everyone that we meet in every situation that we've come across. And I think when you move into a leadership position in a company, it's your responsibility to kind of go through your journey with an open heart and open mind, and never discount how one person or one situation can add to that blueprint, because that creates the foundations for the next part of your growth or your journey.
It's extremely well said. I often wondered, I try to play this game every once in a while with myself. If I was incapable of ever having a negative thought, what would my day be like? If I
no question. that has me on the back foot as well. That's like, going through your day without a negative thought. Well, that just means to me you just completely have total control over imposter syndrome. It's like, if you can show me a person who can do that all the time, you can put on a poker face, but I don't think there's an individual on the planet who that doesn't catch at some point.
No, I think that goes back to the childhood thing we were talking about earlier. We're carrying our childhood wounds and fears and things, and behaviors all the way through. But I mean, I'm like, if I could just invent this one thing, like somebody could push a button and never have a negative thought, how much more would they be ahead in 6 months, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And look, I know that it's important that you train your mind to be, to be able to compartmentalize and push those thoughts to the side. But it's not like it doesn't always happen. There are times where you have your moments But I've learned that it's okay to have those moments, but just let them be short-lived because you got a job to do.
Yeah. So it's the recovery time, really. It's okay to be upset, but how quick do you recover, right?
Exactly.
So we were originally going to talk about strategic value. We are starting to ease into that.
Yes.
I have a friend who teaches people how to exit businesses.
Yeah.
And I'm very much into what he says, and it's all about creating strategic value to get a multiple, because the average company, if they sell, is only getting like 4.7% EBITDA on their business today. Yeah. But he's teaching people how to get 10, 15, 20, 30x, right? Like Slack and Microsoft at like 26x revenue, that type of thing. And one of the biggest components is about strategic value, that businesses are sold, they're not bought. And we've got to create more strategic value for the buyer's lens, the buyer in mind. That's this kind of concept. And I know you use a lot of strategic value positioning in your business. But I also know that when I talk to businesses, a lot of them don't get the concept, or they understand it conceptually, but they don't realize the value of it.
Yeah. And I think it's really difficult to wrap your head around that unless you are working with individuals who know it intimately and inside out, and it's what they do. Over the last couple of years, we were on that journey. Like naturally, when your company moves into the 7-8 figure space, high 7 and low 8-figure space, you have to be looking at that with the utmost importance and urgency, because look, you don't know, you build a company, whether you decide to build it for an exit or not, you never know what opportunities might arise down the line. And you need to always be prepared for those, because you don't want to miss opportunities either. So, I think working with the right people, when you're at the point where you can pay them, because they look, anyone worth their salt and that has the knowledge to help you build a strategic plan to increase the value of your company, they're going to charge accordingly. Right. And we've been on that journey for a couple of years. And some of the stuff that I've learned looking back, I was like, there's no possible way that you could ever find yourself in the space or the time to navigate the different rules and regulations, and even in some cases, loopholes that you can utilize to set the foundations for your company valuation. We've made some huge changes ourselves over the last couple of years, and it was predominantly based around where we could get the most tax efficiency, where we could make the most impact from a regulations perspective. Naturally, if we're manufacturing at a higher level of regulation, that brings a value to the company, because we know anything we send globally will meet the requirements. That's why we chose Ireland as the principal manufacturing space. We also know that by making Ireland the principal company, we're saving on corporation taxes, which naturally can be reinvested back into the company and build your assets, build your company portfolio, which adds value in the end anyway, because it increases your profitability. So look, that there's a lot of different ways. Look, I'm a firm believer that, from an operational perspective, if you're planning on building for an exit, one of the key things people are going to look at when they're buying a company, they're going to look at the individuals in charge and how they run the company, and they're going to look at the processes, the SOPs. Those are only two of the very foundational elements. And if you don't have solid leadership team that has created the SOPs and the operation manuals for the company, if they buy the company, they're going to be relying on you, and that's not what they want. They want to buy a company that relies on itself through its processes. So that's the really simple stuff that you can do at the very beginning and learn how to do, as you grow, because then you've done a lot of the operational work then when it comes to them analyzing that part of your business.
So we're speaking with Mr. Ryan Margolin, I got it right, and from prohairlabs.com. And what you're saying to me is so important. What you're saying to all of us is so important as in building a business, because about 80% of the business on the planet that want to sell never can, and then when they can, they're not getting what they want for the business.
Yeah,
and it's one of those situations that you're eloquently giving the information to people. I want to dig just a little deeper on this, because I don't think people I mean, conceptually, I know people get this, but they don't really get the value of it, because it's kind of like when you're doing that, you don't get paid until the back end.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So it's like, why do I need a trademark? Why do I need this?
Yeah.
Why do I need that? Because it's like I'm just shelling money out for stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to run this company and build it, and it's squeezing my margin. But the back end could be a difference of 5-10x, right?
Well, let's put it this way, right? You register a trademark through an agent, let's say for $800. You bring that trademark portfolio to an 8-figure company, and that one trademark alone could be worth 4 or 5 million, right? So that's more than 10x or 5x. Like that's a huge jump in value, for bringing a company from 7 to 8 figures. So it's really the simple things at the beginning that make the biggest impact, and trademarks, are a huge part of that. Patents are a huge part of that. Anything that can, effectively protect what the company does is a massive part of the overall value. We didn't actually realize that until we started to have our own company valued. And we were like, you look at the value of a company through, I think in the early days, through the trading revenue. You're looking at it going, okay, my company does X, so going by market numbers, average market numbers, it's probably worth this. But then when you actually get the valuation done and you look into the mechanics of how they value it, you then start to spot the points where you're like, oh, I didn't know that there was that much weight on this specific area. And then you start to see the things that maybe you could have done earlier that could have made a bigger impact, And that's the thing, you look at other trademarks you could have had in the industry that other people did pick up, and that could have added to your IP portfolio, and it could have, taken your 5 million valuation to, 30 million, because it stopped people from utilizing certain, words or, certain logos. There's a whole slew of different parts, especially in trademarks, that, you never really truly realize the impact they have until you see the numbers on a piece of paper.
Yeah, and I think, as you're saying, trademarks are one piece, patents are another type of piece. Your process that is not duplicatable, let's say. The ability for someone to acquire your company with ease, and have an efficient removing yourself, as you said, from the company, and becoming strategic. There's so many different types of this type of strategic value. Not everything's paid, right? I mean, you don't have to, but I mean, when you look at a trademark for $800, it's like,
you're almost banging your head on a desk when you notice the impact it can have,
Right. It's like, but I mean, some people pay $800 for an airplane flight. It's like, it's like, and that's necessarily not going to provide, long-term value. It might if you're flying to a client, but
no, and this is the whole thing. I know people look at trademarks as a very singular purpose. It's like, to protect the product or the service or whatever you need to protect. But, it's much more than that, because at the end of the day, if you've got a physical products business and you've got, counterfeiters coming out of China or wherever they're coming out of, whoever's buying the company is going to have their eye on that, because they're going to see, what sort of losses are we having on a yearly basis, or what is the cost of fighting this? Like, look, we had a situation where we were in one part of our valuation, and we were getting quite a high valuation on a specific aspect of the business, but they didn't take into effect the legal cost to defend that position. And look, had we had that trademark, I'd say probably 3 years earlier than we had, we would have been in a much better position, because the counterfeiters wouldn't have gotten to the stage that they were at, and that was a huge loss for the valuation of that specific trademark. So I'll go back to the whole thing. Don't ever dismiss how much a single situation or a person can impact the whole business. So you have to think about those things at the very beginning, get the foundational things right. And I know it's a bit of out of pocket expenses, but you will reap the benefits down the line.
Well, it's short-term versus long-term thought. Really, when it comes down to, my wife, from Poland, an avid gardener, right? And the first time we did a garden and we didn't wrap the garden with fencing around it, bunnies came and calling. Right?
Yeah, that's it.
and they're in there eating this and eating that, and she's getting upset at the bunnies. I'm saying it's not their fault, it's our fault. We didn't
should have put a fence up.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly, right. After we both realized that, it's like, well, the fence was only a couple $100, like, you know, just stick an easy fence
I know.
in. But the reality is that you'd have far more harvest at the end of the year. Now, for those of you animal lovers, we didn't do anything to the bunnies, and you know, and I let them have their due. But the reality is, analogy, if you will, to analogous to what you're talking about, is you're either going to pay now or pay later.
Yeah. It's like the statement as well, you know, choose your hard, you know, it's one or the other. You're going to feel it on one end, you know, and it's like, look, I'd rather suffer it at the beginning and be out of pocket for, you know, X amount of money, than realize what could have been if you put your company in the position to succeed. So
yeah, and you're able to exit out in different ways once you build your company like you have built, right? I mean, once you build it into a system, for example, you don't have to necessarily sell the company, but you could exit out of there and then collect money off the company, have a running enterprise. You know, it's not like Warren Buffett's in every single company that he works, you know, that he owns. He's not.
exactly.
Right? And so there's different ways of doing this. And I really appreciate you bringing forth all this knowledge, because this is stuff that I know people are going, their minds are going, oh my gosh, someone else thinks like this too, right? You know, then going on. So, hey, let's do if you don't mind, let's talk just a moment about your company, what you do.
Sure.
And it's fascinating to me because, you know, my oldest daughter is a cosmetologist, and the moment she heard your company, she's like, I know them, right? And then I'm like, oh, here we go. All right.
Yeah. So look, initially we were a provider of hair replacement products to the non-surgical hair replacement industry. So it was cosmetic bonding adhesives, shampoo, scalp treatments for individuals who are wearing hair or wigs from hair loss from hereditary means, or let's say from a health issue, if they were going through chemo and they lost their hair. So we manufactured products specifically for that. But as time went on, we started to diversify and apply those same principles and methodologies to going into a deeper space in the cosmetic industry. So now it's, you know, hair care, body care, skin care, tanning, you know, sanitizers. There's a whole range of products that we have developed, and they're cataloged for businesses to come in and say, listen, this is the type of product I'm looking for. We probably have it already, and with a small adjustment, we can customize it to their needs. We can custom package it. We can send it in packages that, you know, we have in-house, and we're able to speed up the whole process of launching a new product or a brand, you know, from say 12 weeks to 4 weeks. So it's a really good way. We're investing again. We're doing the short-term pain of investing in the development of the products for a long-term gain, because we can save all the other companies we do business with time and effort on their end, and we can help them through the whole process. Like if you look at our, you know, our development process and our pipeline, part of that pipeline is helping them jump over those hurdles at the beginning. So it's like, okay, this is the product you want. We'll create the marketing brief. We'll send it down to the lab. Next step is, have you looked at your trademarks? We were connected very closely with a law firm that we can pass you on to get your trademarks in order right now. So by the time you are actually ready to launch, that whole process is well underway. So they're, you know, helping them jump over those barriers that they may not realize they need at the beginning, or maybe they do. We can still help them with it. It's a great way to add additional value to the process that we help them with.
So it's not you just selling something to somebody.
Oh, absolutely not. We're sharing all the information of the mistakes that we made with them now, so they can bulletproof, you know, their brand and protect their company, and again, create strategic value with the aim of either keeping it in their family or selling it on, whatever they choose to do.
And the reality is that when we do that with our clientele, because I do that with my clientele as well, I go above. People are like, why are you giving this away for free? Right. And it's like, because they've been with me now for 8 years.
And why and you know, what's the point of doing what we do if we're not willing to share the experiences that we've had? Because ultimately I feel that, you know, the contribution, what we give back is probably most important out of all of it, because it's how we learn. So I agree with that position. It's like you have clients that have been with you for a long time, and you support them in building whatever they're building. But there's no point in keeping all of it to yourself, because it's not going to benefit you all the time. It could benefit you in different ways by just giving back a little bit.
I could talk to you all day.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we can make this podcast 32 hours, because
Yeah.
just go. I really appreciate it. I'd love to have you back on another episode if you're interested.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
And folks, go check out prohairlabs.com. Listen to this numerous times. I think, this is going to have some profound lessons that sink in. So Ryan, thanks again for being here on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I'm very grateful you're here. So thanks.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate it. I had a good time.
Okay. So there are so many things that I can unpack at the end here. I mean, being a hero of your own story, for example, not having that being arrogant, but actually being beneficial, because we as entrepreneurs, business owners, growing our company, sometimes we're in our own way, and we think it's kind of arrogant to actually be out there, trumpeting our own horn, so to speak, when the reality is the market's actually looking for that in most cases. And so they want leadership. They want leadership from the person leading. If you think about a guy like Steve Jobs, love him or not, that man knew how to play a trumpet with his own name attached to it, as well as the company name. And that's one of the reasons that Apple proliferated in its size. It was because he was his own hero of his own journey in that process. And he was talking about the good, bad, and sometimes the ugly that came along with that. So when it comes to leadership, you got to, you can drive that leadership through the process. As a solo person in the beginning, then you build a leadership team. But the mind is a very fun thing, and a mind can work with us or work against us. And as Ryan and I were talking about, what if we could never have a negative thought? Where we would be in 6 months? Where would your life be in 6 months if you couldn't have that negative thought? And you could only focus on proactive, strategic play. I loved what he did with his time, right? Looking at and breaking it down into 3 functions: strategic, tactical, and, health, if you will. Because when you look at your time, even over a short period of time, it tells you a story. That story is, are you strangleholding your business or are you not? And then part of the stranglehold in business is not building strategic IP, not building strategic value into your company. It doesn't have to just be IP. It could be the systems and processes and all kinds of things that we talked about. But the reality is, the higher you build that strategic value, the better your chances of an exit are, if you ever decide to exit. And here's the thing. You'll never know if somebody walks through the door today and says, I'll buy your company for 20x. Here's the point. You never know if it's going to happen. You can build the company up to sell the company, but the reality is you never know when the buyer's going to come along. And I can tell you that from personal experience. I had one company that I sold after a year. I never intended on selling it after a year, but the guy made an offer I couldn't refuse, so the Godfather said, right? And so you just don't know when it's coming. So you build for that point. When you build your company like that, you build a better company anyways. So Ryan, check him out. Check out his company at prohairlabs.com. And I urge you to listen to this multiple times, because it will sink in a little more and a little more on the lessons. They're so profound in this interview. And I'm very grateful for him being here. Once again, if you like the subject matter, and you want different type of subject matter, but you want something that, you just want to know more information on it, reach out to me at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com, or send a message to the team at YouMatter, YOUMATTER, at ceosalesstrategies.com. Let us know what you're looking for. We'll find guests who have expertise on that. That's what we do. And we'll bring that episode to you. Now, if you'd like to be a guest, let's say you're listening to this and you're like, man, I have a lot I can contribute. I have a company. I have these specialties, this expertise. Reach out to us again at YouMatter at ceosalesstrategies.com, and let us know. Maybe we can feature you as a guest. If you know anybody that yourself or team members or companies that want to get their sales teams or people selling, whether they're solo entrepreneurs or major corporations that have hundreds of salespeople, and they want to get into the top 1%, have their people understand what it is to be in the top 1% of earners in sales, not just one of them, but the whole team, have them reach out to me at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com or Doug Brown 123. That is my LinkedIn address. And if you love this podcast, please rate it. Please rate it 5 stars. Don't be worried about having shameless promotion like I'm doing right now in your life, because people respond, right? And subscribe to it if you haven't. If you'd like to be a subscriber, that would be awesome. The more we get, the better the algorithm is for us. And we can bring more quality content to more people, as well as, go out, make it a great day. As always, I say, go sell something, go sell a lot of it, sell it profitably. And you know what? Do right by people, play win-win, make them happy, make yourself happy. And life seems to work out from that point on. Till next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. To your success.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. What is something that you learned that you could act on today? Don't forget to schedule it now, or it may never get forward momentum. If you find our content valuable, please leave a favorable review and let us know what you liked. Please also share this with others if the content will help them. For our show notes, other episodes, and more interesting content and resources, please visit ceosalesstrategiespodcast.com. See you soon, and to your continued success.